Live streaming is on.
Dobre utro. Dobre utro is Russian and means good morning or welcome. So welcome to the 6th edition of our global AVIAREPS live stream. In 2018, AVIAREPS held its general manager meeting in Russia. And I remember many of our colleagues, they actually traveled for the first time to Russia with quite some mixed feelings, I guess. They all came back with wonderful memories, with great experiences. My name is Drechsler. I'm the Chief Operating Officer Tourism at AVIAREPS. Today, I have with me Robert Obolgogiani. Robert is the Vice President for the so-called CIS region, the Commonwealth of Independent States. His territory also includes India. Prior to becoming Vice President for the CIS region in India, Robert was the General Manager AVIAREPS Russia for many, many years. Robert is still based in Russia, in Moscow. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Very good morning. Dobry dzień. I'm absolutely well and delighted to see you.
Thank you very much. Robert, here's my first question to you. In particular, after the FIFA World Cup, after the Soccer World Cup in 2018, we all noticed that Russia as a country opened up more and more for international travel, also for inbound tourism, in particular those major tourism destinations and attractions such as Moscow and St. Petersburg. Is this still the case today?
Thomas, as you correctly mentioned, our general managers meeting to 2018 matched the year of World Cup. And I remember the faces of our colleagues. We were really surprised about what they saw in Moscow because expectations were completely different. The same was noticed from the thousands of people came over for the World Cup, and they were surprised, not only looking and seeing this marvelous and advanced infrastructure Russian tourism industry managed to build and prepare, but also the emotional by the people. There were huge positive impressions, specifically came from countries like Brazil, Mexico, and from Latin America. And Russian tourism authorities basically surprised about themselves that we are actually very popular and demanding country. And this particular moment encouraged the government to invest more into this tourism infrastructure, to make Russia as a tourism-friendly country. And it luckily not only concentrated around Moscow and St. Petersburg, because if you remember, the World Cup was also spread amongst 10-15 cities in Russian Federation, and all the guests were having a chance to travel free of charge by trains amongst those cities, and they suddenly, those small regional cities, never in their entire lives saw so many international tourists. They really found themselves as a potential destinations for future on inbound travel.
Okay. Robert, another question to you. The Moscow office of AVIAREPS, which you were running for many, many years as the general manager, it's not only one of the biggest, but also one of the most diversified and one of the most successful offices within the entire organization of AVIAREPS worldwide. Can you tell us a little bit more about the office and about the operation in Moscow?
Right. We've been operating in Russia already 22 years, and I'm quite proudly looking at the infrastructure we have built in Russia, considering the huge geographical size of Russia, which is spread on 10 time zones from the city of Kaliningrad in the very west of Russian Federation till the Sakhalin Island next to Japan. And so we have built really a quite nice infrastructure of our offices, which Moscow represent our headquarters of Russia as such, but also in other major cities like St. Petersburg, we've been operating since 2002, and other regional cities, Kazan, Novosibirsk, Vladivostok. Why? Because of the diversity of Russian Federation and local habits and traditions. They require local presence, they require local understanding and relationship with the market. Therefore, we realize that it's a right investment also to go further into regions and speak to the local trade, to the local stakeholders on their language. Even though it's Russian common language, but still it's about different mentality. Not as much as in India, but still very diverse. Another point also in Russia, we succeeded and achieved a great diversity in terms of our product. I think we are one of the let's say, best examples in AVIAREPS network, which adopted different business fields. We are very advanced in aviation, as we started from aviation, but went quite many years ago as representation of the national tourism offices. We are producer and provider of car rental services and outbound car rental. We also went outside even typical tourism industries and help to act running commercial representations for such an organization like Dubai Export, helping Dubai companies to find partnerships in Russia and or representing chic outlet shoppings, or even in technology businesses like representing some technical solution like Axelia, selling different solutions, software solutions for airlines, for travel freight industries. So in a nutshell, looking back 22 years, I would say, of course, there were some other maybe opportunities, but we used a lot, and the most of all, which I'm proud of, is construct and build absolutely strong team of professionals, unique people, managers who are looking to the future, who are really diverse, who are proactive, and especially in that momentum of time, having a chance to really change and recover and to become even stronger after pandemic times.
Okay, wonderful. Very good to hear, Robert. You're also the GSA for Marriott Hotels for Avis Budget Group. You represent various destinations from Europe to Asia to the Middle East. And you also received numerous awards, if I'm not mistaken, over the last couple of years.
Yes, my cardboard actually is having quite a number of those awards. I'm very proud of them, and most of them for sales achievements, for proactiveness, both from Marriott, car rental, Avis budget groups, Changi airports. It's really, really great to see. In the past, we've been building our knowledge and experience with our clients.
Great. Robert, I see pictures and I see airlines in the back, and I know you're a passionate pilot as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about the airline situation in Russia as we speak, or in the CIS region?
Yeah, so the airline is actually, the airplane by itself is close to my heart, as I've been educated as an aeronautical engineer, and I'm a really passionate pilot. Therefore, you know, everything which comes to aviation is close to my heart. Where we are in Russia in terms of aviation as an aviation industry, the aviation industry in Russia, it's about 250 airlines in Russia. By those 5 top airlines produce more than 30% of the traffic, and the rest of the airlines are spread across Russia, and this is good because even the government are supporting local airports. It's supporting the mobility of people, and compared to a strategy of the big airlines who are more operating on the hub principle, so operating between big hubs, this local small airlines are trying to, let's say, keep alive those regions, and government are really supporting, which is great, because if the mobility of Russian people, which are still relatively low, we talk about maybe 5 to 10% of people actually ever traveled abroad in Russia. So if today somebody traveled domestically, tomorrow we believe that person will be traveling internationally. At this moment, there are plenty of domestic flights operating, and couple of big airlines in Russia, they already declare that recovery already on the way, because the domestic travel, both leisure and visit relatives, already since, let's say, the safe isolations have been lifted out, so already on the way, which is good. For the international flights, some repatriation flights operating also to Europe, to America, but they are just fragmented travel. On a regular base, still we are waiting until official Russian borders and will be open till lockdown will be lifted. But of course, it's respectively depends on the how the other countries will declare this, let's say, air corridor between the countries to operate. Mm-hmm. On the international airlines part, it's on the standby mode, and the airlines basically they plan, keep planning and moving a little bit of those deadlines. So the most frequent day I've seen on the airline plans to start operations to Russia from the international side is mid-July, end of July. This is like most frequently met. So hopefully that would be the date. If not, maybe August, the latest. So the Russian outbound travel can catch end of summer, or in a worst case scenario, maybe Indian summer season for the international travel.
Okay. Robert, Russia is not out of the crisis yet. However, Russia is always one of the most resilient markets, one of the first markets to actually recover from the crisis. There seems to be a real hunger for international travel.
You're absolutely right. For the resilience, it's another subject I can talk a lot, and maybe it will be better to understand the resilience if you look back Russian history, especially in the last 100 years, in particular. So Russian people genetically, they try to leave today and not much planning for tomorrow. And that's actually, and be happy today if there is a chance. So therefore, as long as the today comes, they basically try to enjoy this tomorrow. And IATA basically have made research during the pandemic, and let's say plan and organize the clusters of people in the way of them to travel. There are 4 clusters, and those who will travel immediately after the pandemic will be over, those who will be traveling in 2 months, and then after 6 months. And there are a lot of beliefs that Russians will be, majority of Russians will belong to the first group, who will travel immediately if the financial situation is there, and way to travel to the countries which give full information about situation on coronavirus, and where the measurements are, safety measurements are, let's say, on top by the government. So, but they will definitely travel, and we can see from the past in different kind of let's say problems and even natural disasters, for instance, Russians were the first, as you said correctly, who travel there, or as soon as the situation is over, they actually travel. Why? There's few major reasons. Number one is climate. Russia has tough climate, specifically in regions. We have lack of sun, lack of good weather, and people, of course, it's let's say the priority of to have a sun and sea for families, for kids. It's really on the top of people. So once a year at least, people should go there. Number two challenge is infrastructure. With all the efforts and the Russian government is doing to build infrastructure, still there is a big gap between the existing infrastructure, specifically in the regions, and the expectations of Russian consumer. Because Russian consumer already saw the world, they know what the service is, and they really want to get it. So therefore, even though we see a lot of increase of the domestic travel right now, at this moment in Russia, still people and really are waiting for a lockdown to be lifted to travel abroad.
Okay. Robert, let's talk about the so-called CIS region, the Commonwealth of Independent States. What is included in this Commonwealth of Independent State? How big is that region? What countries are included? And what of those countries, or which of those countries does AVIAREPS actually have an office?
Okay, let's jump 25 years back, and the country which is not existing anymore, Soviet Union, USSR, nicely mentioned in some of the famous songs by Beatles or others. Now it's representing CIS countries without Baltics by itself, because Baltics used to be as well a part of the Soviet Union. So nowadays, on top of Russia, there are 3 major clusters, we can say, in CIS. All in the population side, CIS together with Baltic used to represent about 250 million people. With Russia is now 142. The rest is CIS, and those let's say 3 other clusters are the biggest one is Central Asia, with 5 countries inside. The Kazakhstans, all the stans. So Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan. So it's nice to learn all of those countries. With some similarities, we can still see the different backgrounds, different languages within this region, and absolutely different, let's say, stage of the development, economical situation. Another cluster is Caucasus region with 3 countries: Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. All the smaller by population, but quite important, being kind of between let's say the European part of CIS and the Muslim, let's say, world. very interesting part. And then the third one, which comprises 3 countries, Ukraine, Moldova, and Belarus. They are in the very west of these countries. And I'm happy to say that we are active as AVIAREPS in all three regions, having our major footprint in Kazakhstan, but actively penetrating Uzbekistan and second countries. So we've been having plans, and we have a lot of communication with government and bodies in Uzbekistan as such. We have been running office in Ukraine, Kiev for years, I think more than 15 years, having a nice and very strong team of professionals operating in Kiev and also in regional cities like Odessa. And also we've been active in the city of Baku, which is capital of Azerbaijan. So practically we could say we are having really our footprint in all major parts of CIS region.
Okay. But you're not only responsible for the CIS region, you're also responsible for India. Before Corona, there seemed to be a really positive pre-pandemic momentum, if you want, in India, with more and more Indians travel outside of the country and going on vacation or on business travel. Do you see this positive trend to recover and to continue post-Corona, post-COVID?
Yes, my life was great without India, or before I also started to cover India, but my life became perfect when I started to represent our activities in India, because it's really a unique country by all means. It's a country of many faces, of many religions, languages. So if you have active business in Mumbai, it doesn't mean you actually cover the whole India. This is a very unique place. So it's a country of 4,000 cities as such, with 1.3 billion population, and with really strongly increasing outbound travel. Although we can say only 2% of population in India traveling outbound. So we can see huge potential from that country. And I would say pre-pandemic situation already was very encouraging, I would say, with a slight degrees, maybe economy in China still being strong. We saw actually shifting of let's say, attention of the whole industry attentions in developing in India. So we can see it. And all these, let's say, future plans for India's by all means, specifically in IT industries, for instance, which are very much concentrated in India, very positive. The way India is now struggling against Corona, so also it's really creates lots of respect, to be honest, because with such a, let's say, difficult, such density of people, such a mobility of people live in one place and work in different cities. So really huge demand on a travel, even within the one country, to track and to protect people and from the virus. It is a challenge, really much more difficult, I would say, maybe in rather than in countries which have a very strong infrastructure, less number of people, population. But the way they do, really, we can see from the statistics, even though the number of infected is big, let's say, but number of fatalities are relatively low, which is good. So people are actually sitting at home, and there are lots of restrictions on that sense. But I really
in the market. You believe in the Indian market and being part of the so-called BRIC countries, which India apparently is, that this market will recover.
For sure, they will recovering, and thanks to let's say the potential, thanks to the technologies which are concentrated, as I said, in India, specifically in a digital world. So I believe India will be also coming with having, and so also for the outbound travel will be, let's say, gaining more and more. Right now, for instance, the groups, and everyone likes Indian groups, wedding groups, for instance, they are, let's say, on the standby basis. They're not groups maybe planned even till the end of the year. But the travel will be, of course, recovering this year. But in a bigger size, India will come in 2021 for sure.
Okay, it's very good to hear. Closing question to you, Robert. A crisis always requires a creativity as well. Can you give me one or two examples of how creative our teams were to support clients in this lockdown situation to implement a recovery plan, whether it was in Russia or in India. Just one or two examples of this kind of creativity and for the recovery, please.
Yes, the unique situation about the corona is about unpredictability. So nobody really knows what to expect, and there is not a clear plan how to recover. So there is, let's say, there is not a clear medicine against this disease when it comes to the travel. So all the consultants, all the companies are trying to get closer to this right recipe. So we think in our markets, where we operate, we can suggest and propose to our clients the best possible recipe on that sense. And therefore, we try to be really proactive in that sense to understand the future behavior of people, the behavior of the consumer, how fast they will start traveling. But this is a good time really to recover itself, to upgrade our skills, and to propose something which will be which make the people busy during this time, and also get some good ideas about the future. So what do we do? One of the things, it's just as I said, a couple of examples. One example which we enjoy very much, we've been doing with our Flanders tourism organization. So organized the digital or video tours on various museums in Flanders, and it was a nicely done campaign, which was perceived really well by the consumers and by the people, asking us, can you show us more of these museums? I think it's a very nice way of getting the outbound travel, still being in home, closer to your heart, so you can really figure out where you would like to travel.
So Russians couldn't go to the museum, so you brought the museum to the Russians via Facebook, Instagram, and so on.
Absolutely. Same we do with the airlines as much as possible. So taking, like, for instance, as an example, Ethiopian Airlines, we really try to get into this market segments once we have time, really, like a market segment like religious, for instance. Ethiopia is close to Russia by the religious because it's Orthodox country, and we now setting up very tight communication lines between the Orthodox Church of Ethiopia and Orthodox Church in Russia, and planning about organizing various religious trips to get connected. I think it's very interesting, very also close to the heart of people, which help to also to other other sides of economies also to develop. So this kind of approach, we think, is one of the ways to get closer to the right recipe, to so-called recovery plans, whether it will be working in the future if you plan this today.
So very defined, very targeted approach, sales approach, which also, like you said correctly, was very emotional as well. Great, Robert. So let me summarize in a way. So CIS region, it's a very big region with more than 240 million people. Russia, out of those CIS region, is 144 million people, and there's more than 20 million outbound travel trips from Russians every year. The Russian market apparently is not only a resilient market and one of the first markets to recover after a crisis, it's also, I believe, a very high spending market for many destinations as a source market. India, in comparison, a huge market, population 1.3 million people, and before Corona, very positive pre-pandemic momentum. And you believe that it would be a good thing to reinvest in India after a crisis, after Corona, correct? Anything you want to add?
We are looking for also at new countries in my region, in pan-Indian region. We also believe very much in opportunities in Sri Lanka, it's also countries like Iran and Pakistan as well. So it's also, let's say, they are hidden right now. There's some political issues, but they will definitely come on. We also believe very much in reactivating some of the CIS regions as well. So because again, one of the approach might be after Corona that some regions might be more safer than even the bigger clusters. So this we need to have more flexible approach. I think the time should be called like adaptation to the current situation. So flexibility, adaptation, approach, and very careful steps, and listening to the clients and talking to the clients on a proactive manner. I think this is a recipe, the key we can do in a short-term perspective.
Robert, thank you very much that you have been with us today. Thank you everybody who was listening today. Of course, you can also follow us on YouTube. We will be pausing for 1 week with our AVIAREPS live stream and then return after 1 week with a virtual roundtable discussion where we have invited 2 operators from Europe, from Italy, France, Germany, Spain, Benelux, and the UK. So please stay tuned for more information, stay safe in between, and we see you in 1 week afterwards. Thank you very much again, Robert.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.